Viewpoint as a vessel to resist goodness. But commandment! As my reasoning function became impaired, they elevated the show to the pedestal of perfection, with its flaws so glaring. To all who can hear me, to all who will hear me.
What drew me in to 86? What claimed my jaw tight and glued my teeth with might onto this fiction? Do you see these visuals? Do you hear the sounds? Do they not speak of the harrowing themes of cruel, merciless death? The sky is colored by a stunning depiction of missile fire. Your mind is melted by the beautiful animation and ensnaring choreography. This is the sound of death, war, and the suffering of the human condition in an atmosphere of pain. This is the face of industrialized slaughter. The visuals never betray. The color palette of the show is either dim and gritty or bright and saturated, following the state of this character's existence. Happiness contrasted by travesty. Sometimes it is in between. The line art is thin and concise, and this gives the environments a compact feeling presence complemented by a thoughtful lighting composition. Everything is sharp. The visuals are clear and concise. The character design, which some may call generic and uninspired, is utilitarian in its approach. It ensures the people piloting the units of Sun Magnolia visually communicate what their predicament entails. They wear uniforms as their soldiers that can be inferred to be of cheap, standard material. It also ensures that the traits that distinguish them stand out. Fashion terms fail me, but the way Shin's jacket hangs off his shoulders complements his calm, laid-back demeanor, and who we can tell to be a serious soul from how she wears her uniform, buttoned up and formal. Even between the members of this unit, we can tell the uniforms are different, reflecting how these people are a hodgepodge. It lends a degree of believability and fights a tough battle to convince the audience that in another anime, these could have been people. The mech designs such a brilliant idea. The war machines in this show are inspired by insects. You can tell by how they move and operate. The Legion is an uncanny mass of giant lumbering legged things and tiny winged squirming things, establishing that these things are inhumanity in the form of technology. A vital task that had to be done to lend weight to the themes of the show, which we will shortly discuss. And the main team's fighting vehicles more resemble spiders than any conventional infantry fighting vehicle. These design choices are not only interesting, but plant the seeds of a question. Will these allusions to insects play a vital role in shaping how events unfold on the battlefield? The CG appears to be well received too. From what I have read, the consensus is it is not too jarring. This is all lifted by an animation style that is mostly fluid and active. The characters are seldom static for too long on screen, especially when it matters, and the machines move like machines. The show refuses to be a PowerPoint, and the screen is typically filled with creativity. For that is the word to describe the direction brought on board by Toshimasa Ishii. The show is ambitious in its creative use of transitions and the camera, and on this front that ambition pays off. Scenes are lifted and made far stronger than they would otherwise be by a unique angle and clever use of visuals. Opinions on the sound design appear to be fractured, others stating that it does the job and nothing more, others like me feeling that it was good, though I recognize this may be due to my lack of exposure to mecha animation sound design. On the music front, however, the show makes no mistake. Kota Yamamoto's compositions fitting in more uniquely into the military themes, while Sawano's work gives the show its trademark bombast and fluctuations of melody. If the show were so consistent in its victories so as to capture all departments of storytelling as it has captured production, it would be no great wonder then when so many who have reviewed the show heap onto it endless praise. In my anime list, reviewer states, 86 effortlessly mixes tragedy, social commentary, character drama, and mecha sci-fi action, cementing its place as one of the best new anime in any genre. So now I ask you to keep the question at the back of your mind, dear viewer. Is 86 worthy of so lofty a title as masterpiece? '86 is a sci-fi action anime with a strong emphasis on the psychological toll and cruel reality of warfare. Following the young officer Vladlena Milice, a 16-year-old major in the military of the Republic of San Magnolia, the show recounts her opposition to the genocidal practice her country is involved in, which entails sending members of the 86 race out of the walls of the country to die in combat. And I refuse to call them 86's, as I have seen so many do, because that raises the cringe index. Milice grows attached to the new unit assigned to her control, the Spearhead. Thing is, the Republic is a race-driven society which would rather see the 86 slaughtered by the enemy force termed the Legion, an automated robot army forged as a last-ditch effort to keep power in some long-dead empire by that empire's ruling class. These are a lot of big questions, and the burden is on the show to settle them. You can see why the high presentation quality goes a long way in laying the groundwork for the show's strongest themes: the futility of war against AI, the pain of endless deaths, racism, and the question of fighting against an oppressive system as a single individual. 86 certainly is wonderful to look at and to hear, but this is the outward layer. To find out just how well prepared this dish is, we'll have to dig deeper. In service of one thing are all those elements: the plot. Indeed, in production, 86 scores a resounding victory. Not a flawless one. The characters do have episodes of restricted movements and expressiveness, and there are a few noticeable jank moments, but it is a victory nonetheless. But if the show fails to leverage that advantage effectively by providing substance that is up to the same standard, what is the gain? I mentioned I was drawn into this anime by existentialism, the nightmare of endless war against an unfeeling, immovable horde, and the peculiarities of the pseudo-historical futuristic world and its military system. These are questions a masterpiece would have no challenge in delivering on. They say the show is masterful on all fronts, that it elegantly handles the themes it raises. Let us analyze such a claim by studying the plot progression on exhibit. The show begins by establishing that the Republic is in constant conflict with the automated enemy force of a long-dead empire, the enemy fighting for no other reason but that the last command it received was to fight. We are introduced to the 86 with their commander, another kid named Shinei Notsen, and it is promptly made clear that as the 86 have been forced to fight for so lengthy a period, only the children remain. Such is the justification of why we must yet again follow a teenage cast, even in such a setting so clearly attuned for an adult cast, the strength of which you may judge. We are shown how Shin, also called the Undertaker, must necessarily euthanize his own allies once they are fatally wounded, as the Legion who otherwise harvest their brains for a use that is initially kept in the shadows. Lena is shown to be adamantly opposed to the Republic's genocidal practice, and the question of what can the individual do against such a system is raised. Themes: psychological cost, the pain of death, racism, fighting the system, and the futile war. You can add your own. This being set up, we expect that the show will provide some resolution to these ideas. As the show progresses, with a few days which could, though obvious, be reasonably expected to elicit feeling by virtue of one particular pool scene which was put there to endear the victims to the audience, the plot twist is unveiled that even the privileged citizens within the walls, the Alba race, are not safe, as the Legion's harvesting of human brains was to enable them to extend their operational lifeline beyond the initial 2 years. The Alba within the walls, having calculated that the Legion AI would become defunct within 2 years, intended just to keep the 86 outside fighting merely to die. That was not to be, however, as the Legion would now be able to simply overrun the Republic with their additional lifespan. Death theme is highlighted with the key losses, and the idea of racism takes on a nastier texture once it becomes clear that even with the knowledge of how the Legion is going to extend their lifeline, the Alba would rather die than allow the 86 within the walls, regardless that such a course would end up benefiting them in the long term. However, revealing that the Legion also think and feel and are not mindlessly continuing the war makes the theme of future war redundant fast. For this theme to have maintained its relevance, it was necessary that just as in the initial episode, the depressing overbearing atmosphere be maintained. This was what I found to be the strongest blow as an individual who came into the show primarily for depression and pain. Now that the Legion have a plan,
now we'll be together forever. I'm coming for you, without my fragile human body.
and an intent. It is no longer pointless when a character dies, and their suffering and heroic sacrifices for each other retroactively become less significant. It's also revealed that for all members of the Spearhead Squad, now under Milit's command, their final orders have always been to launch a suicidal recon mission into Legion territory to ensure that they do not retire but die. By this point, only 5 members of the Spearhead Squad remain thick in their plot armor, and it is worth noting that the other deaths of the squad were not explored and could not have been impactful either way, as the show did not invest the audience into them. They remained just names. Theme of death becomes terminated as a relevant idea. The bane of death becomes referential only. The only semblance of what was there in the first Blink episodes only becoming remembered in the second season through the character of Eugene. Not enough, not on time. These 5 survivors become saved by the geared Federacy after it had seemed like they had finally reached the end of their line, in a revelation that humanity beyond Legion territory has not perished. The new cast is introduced, including Ernst and the friendly neighborhood lolly Frederica with the Sharingan. The theme of justice and the traumatic effect war has on soldiers, particularly kids born and raised on the battlefield, is introduced, and the concept of fighting an oppressive system just vanishes without resolution. Unfortunately, the destruction of the Republic of San Magnolia heralds the death of racism as any theme of note in this show. It still remains not as a driving issue or a key point as it was in the initial episodes, but manifested as something to be reminded of by how these random strangers looking pointed discussed these 5 kids. Racism is a serious real-world issue, and like all problems, the best way to deal with it begins by understanding it. 86 may actually do harm in its insistence to continually portray racism as being just an inherent trait of the individual, rather than something formulated by their social cultural environment. The show just has people who are racist for no reason and those who are not. The implication being you are either born a racist or not. The racist is simplified into just an unreasonable person with hate in their heart for no other reason but just because, which is not the case. Racist beliefs and ideology all stem from a process that can be analyzed and understood. We shouldn't discourage doing that. Not accepted or condoned, understood. I can see why a person would believe the African is not fully evolved or is incapable of equal thinking, because I can take the time to study the theories of evolution and other sources that they derive their arguments from, as well as by seeing the environment they are surrounded by. Through understanding the problem, can there be a basis to bridge the divide and see how to deal with or help the person. In 86, it is just known that the 86 are hated. It is just the fact that they are labeled pigs that failed to evolve. Why? Not explained. The good intent is there. By portraying the racist as irrational and unfair, the anime is attempting to indicate that racism is bad. The show did not need to go so far as to deconstruct the racist mentality. However, the failure to merely understand what racism even is beyond what behavior it causes it to fail to say anything meaningful or reasonable beyond racism bad. By the point where the various nations unite to launch their joint strike against a common enemy, the themes are so inconsistent and the show fails to land even one interesting statement with all these brilliant ideas. Here's a statement from Wayland's crafting unforgettable characters that demonstrates the point I'm making. Story without theme is like ice cream without milk, but to be effective, theme must be organic and often understated. Like all the finer points of writing, theme is an art, but one with mastery. In all its lofty attempts at being grandiose, the show forgets that there is no shortcut to well-developed and effective themes. Is it any surprise then when reviewers make statements like Lena, Major Militia, feels like a Starbucks liberal arts student dragged out of a world and dropped into a fascist world, bursting into classrooms unannounced, preaching ethics to a bunch of kids. That ambition alluded to area. The show does not lift it, but is crushed under its weight. 86 attempts to say a lot of things, but by the point we currently are at in the anime, it has yet to leave one succinct and clear argument uniquely its own and uniquely free from confusion. It has yet to lay a theme that doesn't feel heavy-handed without unceremoniously dropping it later. Some have argued that from reading the light novel, it was obvious that 86 was never about the militaries, the deep philosophical themes, or anything of the nature that the anime set up. Such arguments would be right, but the question is, in the anime, the subject of this discussion. When 86 discussed the themes and ideas it introduced, what does it bring to replace them? What remains if those expectations the show set up are not the core premise? 86 attempts to say a lot of things. Initially, one is led to believe it to be successful. The show begins perched on a high cliff. The first episodes reflect the potential that could have been. It's too early on, so concerns about the intricacies and details of the military and combat can be brushed to the side. It is only the first episodes, and so the intrigue and potential of Shin and Lena is still vibrant. The dialogue is well enough, and the show is in competent hands. The genuinely meaningful deaths take place in these initial stages, especially Black Dog, who dies rushing off to save a comrade from the Legion. This having been set up by that pool scene we mentioned earlier. While the assertion that pool scene was cliche and perhaps jarring in contrast to the rest of the show's mood is valid when properly defended, I found it not to be that jarring. In light of the emotional release it helps facilitate later, specifically in this scene when Black Dog is killed in action. Something close to the sentiment expressed by star-crossed anime about that pool scene. And by making it a team flashback rather than individuals, 86 did something rather clever. It gave everyone a death flag, and in doing so, it made totally unexpected deaths still work. Perhaps I'm a simpleton, but despite knowing fully well what to expect in such a scene, and knowing why that comedic relief was put there, it still extracted a chuckle. In these first episodes, the themes are still new and fresh, and the depressing and overbearing mood is still intact. More understandable from what little I know of the light novel's execution of this idea, dear viewer, is the show's failure to provide material in the way of military strategy. There is no explanation or reasonable means to infer unit structure, team compositions, and their operations doctrine in a combat scenario. If you entered searching for complex positioning and interesting use of the insect machine concept, you will leave hollow. The physical capacities and limitations of the Juggernaut units are never explored in any depth, and so the audience never gets the sense of grasping the danger of any given scenario. They never feel the thrill of following an evolving fight as per given rules. Inevitably, the biggest casualty of such a set of affairs and presentation is that there is no tactical strategy ever employed. In its battles, the audience is only able to tell that things may or may not be proceeding as planned only by the exaggerated anime reaction of some character, not by directly observing the combat. Wasted are many words we hear of positioning, platoons, plans, yet none of these ever plays any consequential role in determining the flow of the conflict. It is even worse at the operational level. In a later scene, while planning to destroy the Legion strike platform, Morpho, operational strategy is explored as Command discusses the failure of their cruise missiles and various other weapons to destroy the enemy railgun, the Morpho. They plan instead to send the 86 on a suicide mission, reminiscent of the one San Magnolia sent them on to do just that. But that is all. We seldom ever hear the operational or tactical overlay of the situation, and this kills the stakes. This mirrors the moment-to-moment action, an action that boils down to long-range shooting duels, followed by toys being mashed against each other. Observe Shin performing magic in his Juggernaut. As audience, we know not of the machine's boundaries. The extent of our knowledge ends at giant spider with gun. So we do not question when questionable feats of physics breaking are performed. Shin, touted as the strongest pilot, this never comes across as anything more than him just choosing to maneuver his machine more, and it seemingly being naturally faster than all the rest. The show's visual language attempts to sell this as he is being more skilled. But what if I told you the show is a liar. What if I say to you, the show knows the genuine stuff you are looking for? The only demonstration of skill by the Undertaker is in the very first action sequence during the very first episode. The rest of the stuff in the show is Sharingan magic. Juggernauts are presented as being legged LVs with a single cannon. The gun does not have a turret, and so the entire body has to twist to adjust its aim. In the first action scene, these limitations come across through the combat, not as exposition to explain some impossible feat. And Shin's combat prowess is more than just a character reacting to some magic and saying, "Yeah!" As you can see, our cool, brooding guy is a brilliant pilot. It's in the little details. Somehow, they got it right here. Watch how the Undertaker's legs absorb the momentum of his jump here. Observe how the shift in gravity center is reflected by the right legs pressing closer to the ground than the left as it fights to keep from tumbling over while maintaining forward trajectory. See how the front legs bend to enable the Juggernaut to duck under this Legion and swing around. Observe how, true to the insect motif, the Legion hits crumples like some bug on being destroyed. This was the potential. The action in this show could have comprised of more than just machines scurrying and firing. Each pilot could have actually been as unique as their nicknames suggest. For example, Kurena, whose Juggernaut is designed differently to see a sharpshooter role, could have provided great variety if it were not for the fact that this information is actually redundant to the action as it unfolds. I only ever realized that she was a marksman in season 2 because she said it out loud as exposition and demonstrated this by firing cluster shots from the Morpho during their geared suicide mission. The fact that she is a sniper being used as the plot device to enact a heartbreaking sacrifice would have been heartbreaking if we actually cared for her as a character. So where are we at the end of it all? In tactics, strategy and action, all 86 presents is a platter of fluffy, nice looking, impressive sounding emptiness with nothing solid to tuck in. In the same vein, Legion present one of the show's biggest thematic failures. Recall what I said drew me in. The fruitless, painful war against an unfeeling and unthinking horde which serves no function and carries no will beyond war. On one hand, humans with loved ones and emotion. On the other, programming fulfilling a dead objective. With a contrast so stark, you need not do much to sell the tragedy in each death. It's a struggle of men versus machines, but distilled to its purest. I thought, wow, that is how you make an unsympathetic antagonistic force work. Just like in life, the challenge need not be some complex moral conundrum. It need not be other people to be painful. Then, big brain plot twist revealeth the Legion let them zombie becometh. Apparently, the harvesting of human heads was being done in order to ensure that the Legion extends the expiration date of their AI by grafting human neural systems into their network. What's more, the Legion enemy remains not so motivated by a needless, inhumane goal, but by such normal things as revenge, guilt, or anger. The machines are humanized. For that, we have traded the idea of utility. We have traded the tragedy of empty, meaningless death. When the Morpho is threatening to kill Shin out of hate, it is no longer some cold and feeding thing. We lose two things: a unique antagonist and the theme the show had set up. Proponents will argue that the show becomes more interesting, that this ensures the audience can understand and connect more with the struggle between enemy and soldier. Yes, but with this show's track record of shallow characterization, this doesn't happen. We still feel nothing for the Legion human that we did not feel for the Legion machine. I also say it is possible to cause an audience to become invested in the protagonist's struggle, even if the enemy seems not to have a greater purpose. Throughout this video, if at any stage you got Attack on Titan vibes, that was intentional. And yes, I am saying this show would have benefited more from sticking to the formula it borrowed from Attack on Titan. That the Titans in that show have no personal connection to our heroes in the earlier seasons and seemingly no greater purpose is a feature, not a bug. That the Legion must now be revealed to be just like the humans now is not a gain, it's a loss. but it's understandable. As an aspiring writer, I know it is difficult to construct compelling motivation for the protagonist if they lack connection to the antagonistic force, and connection is easiest to forge between two people than between a person and an object. Typically, it is advised to ensure the protagonist and antagonist have a personal point of conflict. It is the easy option, but still, it remains a sore disappointment to find such the direction Asato took their work. Consistent with the show thus far is Hallowless. All its ideas seem to be coconuts, which you knock on only to hear empty echoes. The plot feels about unfocused and hazy, attributable to its being a light novel adaptation. This may be, but the show is what it is, because so many threads are picked up and dropped unceremoniously, even to the extent that magic and some royal bloodline nonsense was introduced in the more recent episodes to grant our co-protagonist the Sharingan. The feeling that the show has no point persists. It is difficult to invest in any element of the show because you know it will not deliver or it will be dropped. Because the plot wanders about so much, it becomes directionless. And as we will soon cover in the character section, because the characters are weak, none of the world, its cultures and people, none of the story, its actions and reactions ever feel more than just shallow. These are plastic stakes, not real feelings. If we expect our readers to take our characters seriously, if we expect them to be impressed, if we expect them to remember them long after the back cover has been closed, we can't rely on the characters' good intentions or impressive speeches. Characters need to do something to prove themselves worth defining. Crafting unforgettable characters. No flaw is more damning than the show's failure to deliver on memorable or even just decent characters, oft called the beating heart of a narrative. Characters are crucial in tying the audience to the themes and ideas of any story. We will divide our analysis into 4 segments: Shin, Lena, the spearhead, and the supporting cast. I do not believe in writing formulas. Each story and novel is unique and requires different handling, yet I recognize how useful they can be, particularly to an aspiring writer. A character like Shin reflects one of the dangers of formulas. You may feel a character is come to life when you do the things they say you ought to do for realistic characters, when in reality they are still cardboard. Shin apparently has the entire quarter, a goal to kill his brother, a motivation to protect his friends from being grafted into the Legion and to honor their memories, and he even has a quirk, his unique attachment to that dog machine thing. For all intents, he should be a fleshed out character, a person who has witnessed so much trauma that he keeps to himself and cannot bring himself to be close to anyone or be very expressive. Many, it seems, buy this act, and for them it is good. I certainly tried hard to be one of them, but listen to this. Shin is pretty bland. I get that they were trying to go with a tragic backstory. However, when the dude kills his brother in a single episode, I couldn't care less, yeah? Don't get me started when they try to show how Shin has changed after killing his brother. Dude just laughs at every sentence for no reason. Yes, Shin even has an arc. He is driven by an unhealthy desire for vengeance on his brother, which results in an emotional release that leaves him apparently unburdened of his past trauma. In the episode that followed, he is cheery and happy, and I thought, wow, there may yet be more to the character writing in here than I initially supposed. But as you have heard from the reviewer, the change doesn't land. For us to believe a character is real, it takes more than showing them smiling or not smiling and telling us how to feel. Shin suffers from perfect syndrome, a trait typical among anime characters. The creator wants us to feel he is cool, and only that, and everything else about Shin is constructed in service of that, such that is excusable in a tertiary character. In a lead character, it is death. None of his flaws are genuine. All his intentions are pure. Even his desire for revenge can be reasoned as being justified, in that he is doing his brother a mercy by destroying the Legion unit using his head. The show's visual language presents his quest to kill his brother as noble and awesome, and so it cannot register as a genuine flaw to the audience. If there is any character drama, it is because he is suffering and in pain, and this can work, but it can't be all you have to offer. Compare to other stoic, quiet types who are not only cool but feel real. Levi from Attack on Titan. The show doesn't always paint him in a clean light, and unlike the fan girls, the show does not glorify his sadism or insomnia and other problematic traits. Kogami from Psycho-Pass is cool, and he exudes that uncaring presence Shin wishes he had, but he feels real because his bad traits are not glossed over. Shin ain't not is popcorn. I had written him off when the show surprised me. Upon killing his brother, he generally becomes a happier person. The show was willing to acknowledge that his previous brooding, cold and aloof behavior was a genuine problem with his psychology and not some cool trait to fawn over. In that instant, he had been elevated from bland to something greater. And then the show threw him back to being brooding, suicidal and upset all the time for no reason again. This time worse, as his goal of killing his brother has been fulfilled, and without even a goal to explain his actions, he's worse than before. The challenge is, for Shin, like Major Milice, real depth would have required actual time and true exploration into how these characters think. The show was simply too ambitious to leave room for that. Likeability is overrated. As writers, we want readers to love our characters. We want them to connect with the men and women who inhabit our stories. We want them to empathize so strongly that they are moved to laughter and to tears. We want our characters to be as likable as possible, right? Well, maybe not. Crafting unforgettable characters. Major Milice, the bloody queen, is a decent character by this show's standard. But like Shin, she is not really as complex and multifaceted as they try to play pretend. You can feel the writer's hand. You can still tell how much they want you to find it to be cool, respectable and yet relatable. Challenge is when these emotions spurn from nudging and prodding by the creator rather than as a natural byproduct of a well-written character. It only creates a friction. Lena is supposed to be the bloody queen. She's supposed to be ruthless and cold to juxtapose a cheery teenage self. This is shown, but when does it ever feel genuine? Perfect like Shin, all her intentions are pure. She can do no harm except by accident, and the greatest extent of her feeling was not calling the 86 by their real names. What? So this shows she wasn't treating them like people. What? Well, anime logic, but still, that is not genuine flaw. If a writer wants us to like a character, portray people, not angels. A gear switching from cute to severe and cold felt rough to me for that reason, but I can respect the attempt at depth. Certainly she's better than Shin. The relationship between them did not invest. It takes more than red chicks and weird anime sounds to pass off as romance for me. Your characters are paper, all I seek is scissors when you paste them together. The writer didn't humanize the slave soldiers at all, it dehumanized them. You couldn't program robots to be more obedient and mindless than these kids were. How messed up do you have to be to think that kids would behave in this way? Even the most programmed, brainwashed, fear-stricken Japanese soldier would have a greater will to survive than these kids. The whole series is a wasted opportunity. The world they inhabited and the conflict therein was interesting. The world of 86 does not feel real. It is not genuine and so does not earn the respect of the audience. This is enmeshed in the supporting cast much as it is in the world building. The members of the oppressors, the Alba race, behave as cartoons to put across the ham-fisted message that racism bad. That's it. They accomplish little more, and this kills the believability of the world. More damning is that the members of the Spearhead Squad steadily become worse as the show progresses. The show plays pretend that giving them a singular trait and telling us they care for each other is enough to invest. Andrew was the only one with potential to elicit feeling, if not because she's a yandere, because of her relationship with Black Dog. But beyond that, these soldiers have nothing to add or take away. They do not act in significant ways, and all we are assured of is their good intentions and positive wills before they die. Their discussions, they consist only of them repeating the same ideas over and over. They like to run their mouths about how as 86 they are oppressed, but it is their pride to die on the battlefield either way. They willingly choose to fight and die rather than actually do anything to remedy their situation. The 86 are not being rebellious, they are being stupid. Towards the end of the first season, they show how the 86 crew can survive in the wilderness. It is difficult, but they have the option. So what do these geniuses do? They sit there and run headfirst drift into their deaths like a bunch of moron moths fly into the bright light that is laser beams and hot lead. The silver hairs live a make-believe line that would all come crashing down when the flood would hit their gates. Again, completely stupid and irrational. That irrationality really makes me dislike this anime. It would be one thing if it was Stockholm Syndrome, but it isn't. These guys know they are being led to their deaths like lambs to the slaughter. If your characters do not behave as would be reasonably expected by a human, they become moral pieces, proclaiming the bizarre message that if your oppressors force you to go die, the most honorable thing to do is to die fighting for them. Sabotaging them being presented by the show is somehow dishonorable. This is genuinely what the show believes. This is genuinely what the show considers a badge of honor. Whatever the case, these are not people. This is popcorn. Among the greatest casualties of this poor writing is the world. Commencing with the casting of these hardened soldiers as teenagers, it is understandable that certain ideas and thematic concerns necessitate the adolescent to young adult perspective. A large proportion of anime therefore features children as the main focus, but is it always necessary? Sometimes it is clear the ideas of a show would have been better served with an adult cast, more mature ideas and more realistic handling being able to be explored. In 86, a military anime about death, loss, and fighting on, I failed to understand why it was necessary for these to have been children, and I refuse to believe that the entire adult populace of the 86 has been killed off. This is yet another contrived excuse for our cast to be children, but for what? Please tell me, what does it add to the story specifically that the cast be kids? The rest of the supporting cast feel pretty weak. Everyone else is really forgettable. Nothing is interesting about them. Sure, the supporting cast characters go through hardships, but I don't see any growth. I feel disposable, recycled with singular traits or cliche statements to be made, which do not go a long way into making them feel like genuine people. The world suffers, and none of these new environments, none of these unique places feel real because they are populated by a cast that feels superficial. Here we have a show that is being placed on the highest of pedestals, that people tout as a masterpiece that was candidate for anime of the year, with sloppy themes, the shallowest characterization, and inability to commit to its strengths. Had the remaining team died on the initial suicide mission and the show wrapped up in season 1, the show would still have lost steam, but it would have made a potent statement now that the plot saved them, and it literally resurrected that dog because death is now taboo for those who matter. When in the most recent episode it appears the entire team has been killed again, I do not believe it. I do not believe they'll remain dead for I know this show now is the same show that once upon a time made an opening that changed the characters presented on screen as people died by the way. This anime deserving of all that. With this plastic world, 86 is so unfocused that it has scattered instances of brilliance held together by a string of mediocrity. In its hubris, it makes a show of being sophisticated and intricate, but this show is not a masterpiece. No, it has the pieces of mastery and the ambition. Apparently that is enough for many, but I cannot give such badges when all I can feel is the writer's hand attempting at a depth that does not exist. The show is popcorn, not meat. Chew on it, but not too hard.